Today on Notsam Wrestling, we get a look at who Randy Orton is right now. CM Punk is mad when you call him old. Drew McIntyre and Jacob Fatu fall off of a scaffolding or something. Jelly Roll is back and so much more. This is Notsam Wrestling. Welcome to Notsam Wrestling, and once again, the spot where I think that we find ourselves talking first this week is all about Randy Orton. And what Randy Orton did on SmackDown. It feels to be the conversation that has been permeating the wrestling world in the last couple of days. Randy Orton showing up on SmackDown. Cody Rhodes was not there. But Randy Orton kind of kicking off, I want to say, the beginning of the second hour of SmackDown and then being a prominent part of the show throughout. So you had Randy Orton come out and explain himself. Now, interestingly enough, Cody Rhodes was not on SmackDown this week. They're hyping up to, I think, the confrontation between Cody and Randy goes down next week, where Cody responds to all this, and maybe that's when we find out who Randy is on the phone with. But before we get there, Randy, he comes out, pulls up the chair, he's hearing voices, the song is playing, and he sits down to talk to the audience about what happened last week on SmackDown. He says that, he's been getting all these smiles from fans and signing all these autographs and hearing from everybody who were talking to him about how much he meant to them, about how much Randy Orton had meant to all of the fans. And he said that there was nothing that could have felt more empty to him, and that he did not want his legacy to be about shaking hands and kissing babies. He didn't want his legacy to be about making fans' days better. He wanted his legacy to be about gold. He wanted his legacy to be about being a 15-time world champion. And then the only way that he was going to get there was by doing what he started last week. Now, this was a very interesting, because he said it so coldly and so matter-of-factly. This was not, I've heard a lot of opinions about Randy's promo and how people were still cheering him. And there have been those that say, well, this is not an effective heel turn because nobody's booing Randy Orton. I think there's an awareness that it would take a huge amount to expect people to boo Randy Orton. And even if you went that far, there'd still be a good chance that folks were not going to boo Randy Orton. The idea that right now Randy Orton would get booed could be setting yourself up for failure if that's what your expectation is. Now, maybe by the time we get to WrestleMania, it'll be different. But I think the idea here is that Randy is not, doing the heel thing where he says, and it was all your fault, or I didn't mean any of it. And you have to really look. I mean, the same thing with the CM Punk Roman Reigns story, which we'll get into in a little bit. But that story is not about certain things that are being said. This story is not about the fans. I think the way Randy Orton was setting it up, it wasn't about, well, Randy's a heel now because he's turned on the fans. No, the fans are ancillary to Randy Orton. That with all of this going on right now, Randy's goal is centered around the championship. So the fans can cheer and boo all they want. That feeling that you get when you feel the support of the people. Randy is saying he doesn't feel it. He doesn't have that in him. It's not something that does anything for him. I mean, to an extent, really, Randy wasn't even saying, and that's your fault. He's just taking ownership of who he is. I don't care about this. I care about titles. And the only way I'm going to get that title is by beating Cody Rhodes. Then he talks about how he didn't know if he could do it. He didn't know because Cody Rhodes was his friend, his brother. He didn't know if he could do to Cody Rhodes what had to be done in order to beat him and to take that title away, which makes sense. Because if you remember in that promo, Randy started saying, Cody, this was supposed to be easy. Cody, this was supposed to be simple. And what happens? Cody interrupts him. He says, when it was Drew, it was going to be easy because I could just go after Drew. Cody interrupts him and says, no. I understand. I understand what you want to do. I understand the position that you're in now. And so I want the old Randy back. I want 09 Randy back. I want the Viper. I want the youngest world champion. I want that guy back. And Randy's saying, when Cody did that, he gave me permission. And it's really interesting because nothing that Randy says there is false. Nothing that Randy said there was untrue about who Randy is. And I think one of the most interesting things about this story is so many people are going up to Randy and saying, I know you, Randy, this isn't you. And that's because we're reflecting on the last, 2.5 years of Randy Orton. And this is not the same Randy that we've seen over the last 2.5 years. But anybody that's been watching Randy for, say, 20 years goes, no. This is Randy Orton. The Randy Orton that we've been seeing over the last 2.5 years, that, by the way, never won the WWE Championship once. That was a different Randy Orton. That was a new Randy Orton. That's what made it interesting. That's what made it almost a headline. That this is a Randy Orton who's thinking about his family. This is a Randy Orton who's taking a moment to be reflective about his career and the fact that he's still doing this, who's got this level of appreciation for the people that are riding with him, who's smiling when he gets to the ring, who is, and if you watch him, shaking hands and signing autographs and hugging kids and doing all this stuff on the way to the ring. And he's gotten victories and he's done well for himself, but he hasn't been the WWE champion. And Randy knows the version of Randy that was the WWE champion. So this is now who we get. And he starts talking about the voices that have been referenced in his song this entire time. He literally speaks the lyrics of the song. They counsel me, they understand, they talk to me. And I was like, no, Randy, I know the song. We don't need the words. But he said the story's in the song is what he was saying by speaking those words. The story is in the song. And he said that he's not always in control of the voices, but he knows that he has to listen to them to become a 15-time champion, which to me implies that these voices never went away. The same voices that led to him lighting Bray Wyatt on fire. The same voices that led to him, breaking into people's houses. The same voices that led to him kicking people in the head. The same voices that led to him killing legends. Striking like a viper. Going after John Cena. Going after everybody. Those same voices never left his head. That when we saw this different version of Randy Orton, this friendly version of Randy Orton, this appreciative version of Randy Orton, that when we saw that version of Randy Orton, that voices were still in his head, but he wasn't listening to them. Because he knew if he listened to them, all these good vibes wouldn't be there. That he was doing right, he was being of service, and maybe we'd see it in a moment or two. Nick Aldis caught a couple of RKOs. But other than that, Randy was smiling. When Randy's smiling, it's because he's not listening to those voices. But maybe instead of going, Randy has changed, maybe the real change was that he was consciously not listening to the voices. That those voices still remained. You got to hit him. You got to kick him. You got to ruin his life. You got to destroy him. No, I'm not going to do that. No, I hear you. I hear your voice. I know you're trying to counsel me right now, but I don't need counseling. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to play it straight right now. Appreciate the input, but I'm going to play it straight right now. Except now, he goes, okay, it's been long enough. It's time to be a 15-time champion. All right, guys, I'm going to start listening to you. I'm going to start listening to these voices. And then he ends the promo with something, and I think that and we'll talk about this more as we go, but I think that something that's key right now is that every word that Randy Orton is saying in this story, I think is meaningful. That we could sit there and microanalyze sentences, because I think every word is being said with intention. The same way Randy wrestles. When Randy wrestles, he does things in such a way where every movement has a point. Every movement has a purpose. Every single decision, no matter how small that decision may be that gets made, is made with purpose. And I think the same thing can be said with these sentences that are coming out of Randy Orton's face. That every word that gets said is chosen and is being said for a reason. And he ends this promo by saying, I'm going to take the title, whatever he says, about Cody Rhodes. I'm going to end Cody Rhodes, and I'm going to do it. And this is important. At the main event of WrestleMania. And then the music hits, and that's the end of the promo. At the main event of WrestleMania. He doesn't say on Saturday. He doesn't say at the Showcase of the Immortals, at the granddaddy of them all. He doesn't say at WrestleMania. He says at the, not the main event of WrestleMania. And this is what we talked about when CM Punk and Roman Reigns in their first interaction with each other. We're talking about Drew McIntyre and how they're the bigger stars. That there is still this underlying thing of both of these main events fighting for what's the bigger main event. And I personally believe that, sure, right now, if you had to make a decision right now, I think you would still go Roman and Punk on Sunday, Cody and Drew on Saturday. But I don't think that that's written in stone. I think that that's something we still got 4 or 5 weeks until WrestleMania. I think that that's something that over time, we got a month. It's a month away. I think that's something that over the next month, we look at where the interest is. We look at where the compelling story is, and we look at what the ticket buying public and the ESPN viewing public and the global Netflix viewing public, how they see these stories and what the expectation is and what the match is that they want to end the final night of WrestleMania. But I think regardless, both of these matches are going to walk in on their respective nights looking to show the world why they are the main event. And I think you do have two pairings that are holding the weight of a WrestleMania main event. Meaning you got two pairings with Roman and Punk and with Cody and Randy that already, those pairings are so good that there's everything else going on the show, and then there's them. There's everything else going on Monday Night Raw, and then there's Punk and Roman. There's everything else going on Friday Night SmackDown, and then there's Cody and Randy. And there are other things happening, and there are other huge matches, but ultimately, there's just something about both of those matches that feels big, that feels special, that feels like a main event. And I think they've also effectively gone, hey, we're going to act like the Brock Lesnar match is just as big as the main event of WrestleMania. And if you watch Raw on Monday, you'd go, yeah, I'm feeling that way. I'm feeling like Brock and Oba is right up there with them. But, okay, so we continue on with Randy, because now, coming off of that 9 p.m. promo, Randy basically takes over the rest of SmackDown. And he's walking through the back, and he's getting the dirty looks, almost like Gunther did when he first retired John Cena. He's getting these dirty looks. Angel and Berto don't like him. Randy looks at them, whatever. And there's Matt Cardona hanging out with his best friend, Apollo Crews. The two of them together every week, inseparable. And then Randy looks at Matt Cardona, and he says, anything you want to say? Matt Cardona's kind of stank-eyeing him. Anything you want to say about what I did? Now, it's been established on television that Cody Rhodes and Matt Cardona are friends. During that road to Saturday night's main event, the episode of SmackDown where that four-way match was made to determine the number one contender that would get the shot at the championship at Saturday night's main event, Matt Cardona and Cody Rhodes had this confrontation over the WWE Championship. So number one, that established that Cardona's goal was to be WWE Champion. And number two, it established that the real-life relationship between Cody and Cardona is in the zeitgeist of the television show. It's canon, if you will. And so that's the perspective that Matt Cardona comes from. He positions himself as somebody who's known Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes for decades and is saying that Randy didn't have to do that. He understands wanting the title, how he wants the title too, but to act like this, Randy, I don't know who this is. Randy stops him right there. Tells him to shut up. Says, how dare you? Randy does not like to be judged for what he did to Cody. Can't believe that Cardona, he said, you don't understand. And you never would. He calls Cardona a mark-ass stooge. Look, you don't want to be a stooge, but a mark-ass stooge is probably the worst type of stooge that you can be. Then calls him an indie nerd, knocks him out, and says, don't you have some action figures to play with? Which, I mean, honestly, I was just glad he didn't call him dolls. But, I mean, calling Cardona a mark, a stooge, an indie nerd, and bringing up action figures all over the course of about 40 seconds and leaving him laying, not good. And he says he's got nerve, to talk to him like that. He knocks him silly. Cardona goes to Aldis and says, I want Randy. I want him tonight. I want him now. We continue on the show, and Randy Orton and Jelly Roll come into contact. Jelly, of course, was on the show last week. He's on the show this week again because he's going to get called out by Kit Wilson. And Jelly Roll talks to Randy Orton about, this isn't the guy that I know. Jelly Roll is in that camp of people going, this isn't the Randy Orton that I knew. Why are you doing this? And now Randy Orton has calmed down. Now Randy is not listening to the voices. Those voices, I believe, still exist, but Randy is not listening to the voices. Instead, he said, I know, I did the wrong thing. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have done that. First of all, Jelly, I apologize to you. Jelly says, you don't need to worry about me. He says, I apologize to you, Jelly. I never should have done it. Which is why when people talk about, like, I feel as though heel turn, face turn, all this stuff is far too lacking in nuance to really have a conversation about what we've got in front of our faces right now. That, yes, you could say, well, I don't understand. If Randy Orton's a heel, why is he being nice to Jelly Roll? And it's like, because it's not just as simple as, well, Randy was a good guy, now he's a bad guy. That's not really the world that we live in anymore. It happens sometimes. But there are a lot of stories like this where that's not the case. Randy is doing what he has to do to win the title. That's the story. Whether that makes him a good guy, whether that makes him a bad guy, it is what it is. But now he's not in the midst of it. Cody Rhodes isn't even in the building. Jelly Roll's not getting involved, so he's apologizing to Jelly Roll. Is he actually friends with Jelly Roll? Or is this a larger part of the manipulation? When he calls Cardona to the ring, does he want to apologize to Cardona? Or is that part of the manipulation? When he's hugging Jelly Roll and saying, I'm going to apologize to him. I know what I need to do. Is he being nice to Jelly Roll because he feels bad? Is he being nice to Jelly Roll because he considers Jelly a friend? Or is he manipulating? Does he have a grander plan here? We don't really know for sure. Are the voices kind of clicking in and off? Is he choosing when to listen to them and when to not? Or have the voices completely taking over and now he's manipulating the people who have care for him? Could be either side. We don't know right now. Either one could be true. And he goes, okay, I'm gonna apologize. I'm gonna apologize to Cardona. Then before he gets out there, he takes a phone call. And I love that he takes a phone call in front of a sign that says everything matters, which is kind of a synonym for everything counts. I believe when I saw Randy Orton in front of the everything matters signs in the back, a lot of times I don't consider set decoration a big deal. When it, back when they were building Cody and The Rock and WrestleMania 40, and everybody was freaking out over what faces were on what trucks and what trucks they were fighting in front of. I was never a guy, and you can go back to the tapes. I was never a guy that was looking at the trucks for clues. I just figured the trucks were parked there. Randy Orton, with a sign behind him that said everything matters, And with that sign framed so you could actually read it, that was not an accident, I don't believe. If you mean to tell me that the Everything Matters sign was just there accidentally, then it really isn't true that everything matters. The fact that if everything matters, then the sign saying everything matters being in the shot was there on purpose. Because there wasn't a sign, I'm sure it was just in the building already. Otherwise, what would you put on the sign? Everything counts, obviously. The phrase is everything counts. But Randy is on his mystery phone call again, which we got on Monday, which we'll get into. He was on that mystery call and he said, okay, I'm going to fix it. You're right. I'm going to fix it. And we go, what's he going to do? Is he got the same intention that he had when he talked to Jelly Roll? Is this a conflicting point of view? I mean, I don't think there was a ton of mystery. I think we all knew what we were going to get at the end of that show. But we get Matt Cardona in the main event segment on SmackDown, which, you could say, what, you bring him back and he just gets beat up by Randy Orton? No. That was 3 different segments for Matt Cardona this week. One of them was the main event segment in the build-up to one of the main events of WrestleMania. So it's a good spot for Matt Cardona. He apologizes to Broski. And he says, hey, man, action figures are cool. I play video games. I get it. And he hugs him, shakes his hand, puts his arm up. Dude, the whole thing. And then the moment we knew was going to happen happens. Boom. Low blow. Cardona goes down. Right in those jewels, who, if you were looking on the internet, were also, exposed in a tanning bed not too long ago. But he takes out Broski. He gives him the kind of treatment that he gave Cody. He tries to smash Broski's head in the stair just like he smashed Cody's. But security won't let him do it. What he is able to do is smash Matt Cardona's hand in the back of a chair and then stomp on the legs. Who knows? Injuring him. Hopefully he'll be on the Broski Breakdown this week on SiriusXM with me so we can find out what the severity of those injuries are. But I think that, this all goes back to Matt Cardona being a friend of Cody's. Number one, of course, the fact that Cardona said something that maybe spoke out of turn, that maybe disrespected Randy Orton. And it goes back to a time when Randy Orton did have that reputation in the locker room of maybe being that guy. But I think it's also because Cardona is Cody's friend that he did that. And yet people were still cheering Randy Orton. And I think that's going to happen. Because I think we talked about this a little bit last week, but Cody talking about starting to become a polarizing figure in WWE and just kind of being in an interesting spot with it. I think it is important. Look, I don't think Cody's turning heel. I think what you're going to get is a large portion of the audience that will cheer for Randy Orton. But something that if you really, and maybe I'm thinking too deeply about this, but I don't think I'm ever thinking too deeply about it. That if you really look at peak John Cena, back in the day, monsters were created for Hulk Hogan to conquer. And monsters they're created, for your baby faces to conquer because it needs to feel like there is adversity against them. I would argue that throughout John Cena's run, one of the things that made him a babyface and one of the things that ultimately leaves him at the end of his career as one of the greatest baby faces of all time is that the greatest monster, the greatest form of adversity that John Cena was ever up against was the audience that he was trying to entertain. The fact that John Cena not only had to beat the bad guy, but he had to do it sometimes where the bad guy had a whole nexus on his side, and John Cena still had to plow through. But even if he had a manager or a partner or a faction, the most difficult part of it was that John Cena would have to beat the bad guy while the bad guy had a huge portion of the crowd on their side. What makes Cody the ultimate babyface going into WrestleMania is that there is a chance that the crowd won't side with Cody. And Cody insisting on doing the right thing regardless. And Cody insisting on fighting Randy Orton with integrity and character. Even if the audience is siding with Randy Orton, technically leaves Cody Rhodes a babyface because this audience booing him is the adversity that every babyface needs to conquer. Cody Rhodes needs to beat Randy Orton despite the fact that not all of the audience may be on his side by the time we get to WrestleMania. He needs to push through that and not give into it. If he's fighting a monster and he gives into the monster, that would mean the monster beats him. The monster pins him or submits him. If the audience is the monster that a babyface is facing, then in order to be the babyface, he has to not turn. He has to not do this thing that the audience is waiting for. That's how you beat the audience if you're truly a babyface. And as complicated and convoluted as that is the position that I see Cody Rhodes in. That there is a high likelihood that this hill to climb will be steeper because of the audience. But the fact that Cody climbs it anyway and climbs it in a way with integrity and in a way that is just, ultimately will make him that top babyface. The same way it did for John Cena, that ultimately John Cena did it the right way every time. And when it's time to close the book, everybody looks at him as their hero. I think that's kind of what you've got with Cody Rhodes. Which is why even if he gets booed, the bigger story is the bigger story. The bigger story is the fact that those boos become part of what makes him a babyface. That just becomes more adversity that he's got to fight against. And I think that that's something that we kind of saw pan out for the first time with John Cena. That it wasn't like, okay, if this is the way the audience feels, I'm just going to go with it. That he went, nope. That character went, nope. This is what we have to do. I'm going to fight for it. And he did. And at the end of his career, he left with his head held high. It's a top babyface. And I think that's where Cody may find himself. The other thing about Cody and getting cheered and booed and whatnot is that go back to Vegas, go back to that promo battle with John Cena, go back to that final SmackDown before WrestleMania, watch it, and you'll see Cody gets booed and John Cena gets cheered, and Cody wins that crowd back. That as Cody talks, they start to cheer Cody again. And I think there is a love for Cody Rhodes that sometimes people go, okay, well, he's been a good guy for so long, I'm just going to boo him. And they forget, oh, there he is. That's the guy who I organically cheer, that I organically started to become a fan of. I think that, so I'm very interested to see what happens next week when Cody and Randy are face to face. I'm interested to see how the audience responds when Cody and Randy are face to face, and I'm interested to find out who Randy Orton was talking to, because like I said, everything counts. Every word that Randy Orton says counts. On Raw, he was on the phone with who I would imagine is the same person that he was on the phone with on SmackDown. And he said, it was good seeing him a little while ago. Or them. I don't know if he ever used a pronoun. He said he was surprised that they had seen SmackDown. Maybe not like shocked, but like he didn't know. Oh, you saw that? Of course you did. You're always watching. Right? So that to me said it kind of rules out anybody that's actively on SmackDown. Anybody that would have been at SmackDown on that Friday, you wouldn't say, oh, you saw that? Because they go, yeah, I was at work. I work on the same show as you. But I think, and I didn't realize this until I watched it back, Randy Orton, there were two things that really struck with me. Number one, he said he ended the promo with wrestling has more than one royal family. And then he tweeted out that same quote. So you can't, when I ask you, what does this have to do with family? You can't go nothing. because he ended his promo with it and he tweeted it. It has to mean something. I've got to believe that wouldn't have just been said to be said. And I do not think it's him talking to his voices. He's on the physical phone. You don't need a phone to listen to the voices in your head. That would be so ridiculous. So I don't think it's the voices. He also said this person reminded him of who he was. He said, I'm a killer. He didn't say I'm a viper. He didn't say I'm a villain. He didn't say I'm a snake. He said I'm a killer. Upon rewatching that, the moment he says I'm a killer, I go, that's odd, because I've never heard Randy referred to as a killer. It's always the viper or something like that, but never a killer. Oh, he was the legend killer. That's the context in which I've known Randy Orton to be a killer, the legend killer. So the fact that whoever he was on the phone with reminded him that he's a killer, to me, makes me think legend. Because only I would think a legend would be the one to remind him that he's the legend killer. I think right now, my best guess as to who's on the other end of that phone is Arn Anderson. I don't think it's Ric Flair. I don't think it's a McMahon. I mean, any of these things could be true. It's professional wrestling. You know, some people said Sami Zayn, but it doesn't make sense. He was on SmackDown. I think he's building up a story with Trick Williams. Like, that's like when people will go like, well, why didn't Randy attack Jelly Roll? I mean, short answer, because Jelly Roll's telling a different story. You know, well, why wouldn't Sami Zayn be on the phone with Randy Orton? Because Sami Zayn's telling a different story. You know, you kind of wipe that out immediately. And I kind of think like, okay, if it's somebody who has a family name in wrestling, if it's somebody who's a legend, and if it's somebody that's connected to Cody Rhodes, I don't think it's Cowboy Bob. I feel like Cowboy Bob, you could just come out. I feel like right now my best guess is Arn Anderson. And we revisit and go back to an AEW and when Arn Anderson said if somebody came up to him, he'd take out his Glock. You know, that's the attitude that he has. That maybe, you know, he looks at Cody and thinks Cody has gone soft. Maybe he looks at Randy and he goes, that's exactly how I would handle my problems if I was Randy Orton. I kind of think Arn Anderson. That's where I'm at right now. Could be wrong. Could go in many different ways. But that's where I'm at the moment. Guys, we're going to get right back to it. But Notsam Wrestling is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? You know, shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping that it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill as well. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help you find options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states. Speaking of Jelly Roll, I actually think over the past 2 weeks, Jelly Roll's been doing a really excellent job. Jelly Roll, of course, made his appearance on SmackDown. Only one person can be coming out when you hear, "Who's your daddy?" Da, da, da. I think I at least got the melody. Yeah. Jelly Roll comes out. And he comes to the ring last week and he has his confrontation. But Kit Wilson said he was coming to SmackDown to call out Jelly Roll. So Jelly Roll showed up on SmackDown to be called out. And here comes Kit Wilson. And he walks out there and he says, I'm here to call out Jelly Roll and to handle this like men. And then you hear that song, "Who's your daddy?" Da, da, da. Da, 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 da. And here comes Jelly Roll. And Jelly Roll comes to the ring ready to fight. And Kit says, no, we're not going to fight. We're going to handle this like men. Men use their words. And Jelly Roll says, what? And Kit Wilson invites Jelly Roll to a battle of slam poetry. He said, don't get it twisted. This is not rapping. Don't compare me to some rapper. I'm a slam poet. And he takes out his book of poetry. And Jelly Roll says, you got a book? And again, Jelly Roll's level of commitment is good. Jelly Roll is good at this, man. But, you know, a lot of times when celebrities come in, you want it to be cringe. You want to be able to complain about it later. But I don't know, man. Jelly Roll's obviously very committed to this. Clearly a wrestling fan, which you don't get from every celebrity, and committed to doing cool stuff on the show. So I absolutely applaud what's going on with Jelly Roll right now. But Kit does a good job. He calls up, he calls Jelly Roll toxic. He brings up Ozempic. He brings up Jelly Roll not being able to see his anatomy at a point in his life. Talks about Jelly Roll's criminal past, you know, gets personal. And Jelly Roll responds to it with his own slam poetry that basically is explaining that Jelly Roll had sex with Kit Wilson's mother. Yeah, that's where Jelly Roll was coming from. Which, honestly, if you're not into it and you just want to put an end to it right there, that is kind of the thing. You know, talking about, you know, having his belly. And yeah, you know, I had my belly, but I put it on your mother's back. It's like, I mean, it's very Sean Connery on SNL Celebrity Jeopardy. That's the sound your mother made. You know, it was very good. It was very good. It was very good. Very old school. Look, I went to public school in the late 90s. This is what you do. If somebody wants to meet you in a battle of wits, you tell them you had sex with their mom. That's, you have to. You have to do it. Because that's when it's like, yeah, I'm not messing around. You and your mother and I had a physical relationship, okay? Is that what you want to hear? This is where we're at. And so, of course, it brings out the worst in Kit Wilson. Kit Wilson, who is the guy who is referred to so many other people as toxic. Kit Wilson is there, you know, making it seem like all these other dudes are toxic. Meanwhile, words cause Kit Wilson to respond physically. Kit Wilson goes after Jelly Roll, leaves him laying. So while Nick Aldis is dealing with Randy Orton and Nick Aldis is dealing with Drew McIntyre and Jacob Fatu, Jelly Roll points out that he doesn't know what kind of circus Nick Aldis has going on here at SmackDown, but he wants Kit Wilson one-on-one next week. The match is made, to my knowledge, and it seems like SmackDown in Pittsburgh next week, we get Jelly Roll versus Kit Wilson, which is pretty unreal that Jelly Roll is back for a match on SmackDown. Now, I've got to believe, if I'm using my brain on this, I've got to believe that where it's all going to go is some kind of interference, people coming out, and then we get to a tag match at WrestleMania. Like, I would imagine that The Miz probably interferes in this match, you know, because Kit Wilson is a protege. He's trying to do things through the Miz method. So I would think the Miz and Kit Wilson together. And then honestly, you know, I've read all the rumors. There are internet rumors that it could be Royce Keys, who is Jelly Roll's partner. And honestly, the idea of Kit Wilson and Miz beating up Jelly Roll and here comes Royce Keys, that would be massive. At the same time, I wouldn't be mad at Danhausen being Jelly Roll's partner. Danhausen has been involved in all this Miz, Kit Wilson stuff. Danhausen cursed Miz. Now, look, it could go two ways, right? It could be a part of Danhausen's curse that now Miz has to deal with Royce Keys. That could just be part of Danhausen's curse, and we could move from there. But everybody's kind of wondering, with as popular as Danhausen has gotten so quickly, which is amazing, because I think everybody should have to present the material that they presented on the night of and immediately following Elimination Chamber before they're allowed to join the community of Fanhausens, because there's a whole narrative that has disappeared. But I think if this all leads to a potential WrestleMania appearance for Kit Wilson and Danhausen, I'd be all for it. I think it could be a lot of fun. I mean, you know, between Jelly Roll and Danhausen, it feels like you do need kind of a more intimidating presence that maybe Royce Keys or somebody else would be. That's just what the internet is saying. But I don't know, man. I don't think they expected Danhausen to get this popular and move this much merch and get this kind of reaction this quickly. All of Danhausen's appearances on television have either been in pre-tapes backstage or during the Netflix break, which, by the way, the Netflix break, they live on social, but they go away. You know what I mean? They disappear. They're not even necessarily part of the show. So the fact that Danhausen has really only done that and still when he gets in the ring says, "You are," and everybody says, "Cursed." At the same time, he's got 3 different T-shirts already. I mean, there's something happening here. Maybe you want to take advantage of that and put him in this celebrity tag match at WrestleMania. Or maybe it'd be too odd for Jelly Roll to kind of be the serious one in the team. I don't know. I think either way, it could be fun. And yeah, it's not necessarily a road you'd expect to go down for WrestleMania, but there's nothing wrong with a celebrity match, especially if the celebrity kind of... Remember, wasn't it WrestleMania that Jelly Roll dropped his first elbow when he was much, much heavier? And now he lost a bunch of weight. He goes to SummerSlam, has a great match, loses even more weight. And here we go for WrestleMania. Really, really interesting. I'll just say this. I think Jelly has been doing very great in this role. I actually wrote that down in my notes and then wrote LOL right after it. So that's how I felt about that. I mean, look, we don't get the same treatment from every celebrity. Tom Brady has been out and about saying that wrestling is fake. Just terrible. Can you believe that he's been saying that? Tom Brady said that wrestling was scripted. Yes, Tom Brady is out promoting his flag football league, and he and Logan Paul have been going after each other. You know, Tom Brady says Logan Paul is not a real athlete. Logan Paul says, "I'll fight any NFL player." Nothing is happening. You know, I think I think a couple of things. Okay, so Tom Brady is doing interviews for the flag football thing. And he says wrestling is not a real sport. It's cute and it's scripted. And, you know, we do tend to clutch our pearls a little bit when people who are, especially outside of our wrestling world, start talking about wrestling and being condescending to it. We don't like it. Most of us had that around us when we were coming up. It's very triggering for a lot of us, and I think that that's fine. I think that this is part of promotion for the flag football stuff that Tom Brady is doing, and the fact that Logan Paul is on the opposing team, that, you know, you're building a rivalry for what you're doing with flag football. I think that there is a world where Tom Brady, with all this heat on him, makes it into the WWE. I don't think that it'll be for like a match per se. I think it's more likely that it'll be either a promo or he'll get involved or he'll interfere or he'll be a corner man. But it's just the way it's being set up, I think, is a little odd. Because, like, if you carry on the Logan Paul part of this, then is Tom Brady coming in as a heel and Logan Paul's going to babyface him? Like, I'm not 100% sure where this all goes. I think the bigger thing is, you know, I think my take is that I think as fans, we can't keep acting like saying wrestling is fake is this horrible insult that absolutely needs to be addressed. How dare he say wrestling is fake? It's like, it's so like, oh God. When I hear somebody say wrestling is fake, it's like the biggest eye roll in the world. Like, are we really going back to that well? Is this John Stossel in the 1980s confronting Dr. D. David Schultz? Like, what are we doing with the wrestling is fake thing? I mean, like children. I can see, even when like when I hear third graders go, "Oh, wrestling's fake," I go, "Okay, guys, come on." Like, is that the only thing that doesn't change? Everything in the world changes. Except this same thing that we were talking about in 1983 is still a relevant thing to point out. You can't, if you want to be a heel going forward, that's what I think. I wish wrestling fans would not give Tom Brady the heat for saying wrestling's fake. It should be an eye roll when somebody says that. They should not be, nobody in 2026 should be able to get heat for saying wrestling is fake. If you're a wrestling fan for any amount of time, it's like, I've heard that. We all know what this is. To just go, oh, that's that scripted fake junk, like, shows such a degree of not just ignorance to this product, but full-on cultural ignorance that I can't even begin to wrap my head around it. You know, it's like pro wrestling is part of the culture, whether you like it or not. It's been around forever, and it's been popular for 40 years. We're going to WrestleMania 42, for God's sake. 39 years ago, they sold out the Pontiac Silverdome. 39 years ago, they did Hogan versus Andre, and we're still doing the, yeah, but it's fake thing. It's like so tiresome. And it should be met with an absolute eye roll. Anybody that comes in and go, well, I think it's fake. No wrestling fan should boo them. Every wrestling fan should eye roll them until you have a migraine. Until your eye sockets are sore. That's how much eye rolling you should be doing. You don't have a conversation with somebody who thinks wrestling, who's insistent, wrestling's fake. I can't believe you like that. Okay. Yeah, me neither. Oh, you're kidding me. I can't, like, it's the quickest way. If you ever want me to not speak, if you're ever going like, there's Sam, I want to make sure I don't have a conversation with him. Come up to me and say, oh, I heard you like wrestling. Yes, I like wrestling. You know it's all fake. No, I didn't know. Thank you for telling me. It's the quickest way to get to a road that there will be no conversation about it because it's so dumb. So that's how, and then the fact that it became this bigger conversation, I go, God bless everybody. But like, I can't seriously have this conversation. Number one, I don't believe Tom Brady thinks that. And number two, whether he did or didn't, it's just not, I'm not going to be that guy. Like, okay, then it is. Good. I heard that you deflated footballs, okay? So, like, what are we talking about here? That's what they said. I don't know. I don't watch football like that. They said you deflated the balls. I don't know. I don't know for sure. I mean, when you hear that, it's like, okay, that's acknowledged. That person doesn't know what they're talking about. Good to know. I'm going to move forward if that's okay with everybody. So that's kind of where I stood on it. And I was kind of, every time a wrestling content source, be it a podcast or a radio show or a Twitter account or a newsletter, whatever it was like giving their take on this, I was like, oh my God. Eye roll. So, it's much more important is Drew McIntyre and Jacob Fatu. Drew McIntyre and Jacob Fatu going absolutely ham on each other on SmackDown. Again, another story that it takes place over the entire course of the episode. On Friday night, Drew McIntyre and Jacob Fatu spent 3 hours beating each other up. 3 hours. And it started with a car accident. Actually, a lot of car accidents this week. Darby Allin flipped his Buick while what's-his-face was in the trunk of it. And then you get a T-bone accident to start SmackDown, and Jacob Fatu and Drew McIntyre just fighting on top of it. It's crazy. So Nick Aldis could not get it under control whatsoever. They were fighting the whole time. Last week, by the way, I said that the Drew McIntyre, I was talking about the Drew McIntyre Jacob Fatu WrestleMania match and how I thought it should go. And there were people that were like, hey, Sam, hate to correct you, but don't you know they're fighting on SmackDown next week? And I was like, that's not going to happen. That match will never get in the ring. And it didn't get in the ring. I believe that you will see that match, like I said, at WrestleMania. I believe. So I love it. You know how much I love a chaotic SmackDown open. Every time SmackDown opens with chaos, I talk to you guys about how happy it makes me. And it goes throughout the show. You have the one moment where Tama Tonga and Solo Sikoa are having their moment of tension. After they lost, Tama Tonga, or after the MFTs lost the tag team championship to R-Truth and Damian Priest. but they kept the lantern. Tama Tonga and Solo Sikoa are getting a little tense with each other when Tama Tonga points out, hey, Solo, starting to act a little bit like Roman Reigns. And that didn't sit very well, but that tension was interrupted by Jacob Fatu and Drew McIntyre charging through. By the way, the MFT is not getting involved with Jacob at all. And Jacob's so laser focused on Drew that he wasn't getting involved with Solo or any of them at all. It's locked in. So now they're fighting backstage there. And even at the end of the show, Randy Orton's trying to get called off. And then on the big screens, the cameraman patches through that Drew McIntyre and Jacob Fatu have somehow found themselves just off premises on top of some kind of billboard scaffolding deal. And they're just fighting up there, and Nick Aldis and all the officials don't know how to get to them. They're behind a fence going, Drew, Jacob, Drew, Jake, get down from there. Get down from there. And they said, okay. And they both took a tumble to end SmackDown. And Nick Aldis is threatening to fire Drew McIntyre at the beginning of the show. Drew McIntyre, who, by the way, quit on last week's show. I mean, it's utter chaos. And look, I still think that it's going in the direction that I thought and that I hoped it was going in last week. You know, there have been this, out of all the matches, this is the match that when I speak to wrestling fans out in the real world, and I saw a bunch of them at the big event here in New York over the weekend, which was a lot of fun. They said, what kind of match do you think? I think a lot of people are looking for a stipulation in this Jacob Fatu, Drew McIntyre match, be it a cage match or a Hell in a Cell or something like that. I said, no. I think you should take Drew at his word. Like I said last week, I feel it even more this week. I think that if Drew is going to quit or be threatened to fire or anything, I think you get to a place where Nick Aldis refuses to take ownership over what's going to happen with Jacob Fatu and Drew McIntyre. The WWE as a whole refuses to take ownership over what's going on in this match. Okay? We're gonna strip any indemnity, and you guys are just gonna go at it. We are not responsible for this. As a matter of fact, this is not a fight, because it ain't a match, it's a fight. And this is not a fight that the WWE will sanction. Based on everything that's happened, we can't sanction this match. So if you guys want to go to WrestleMania and have an unsanctioned fight, then you go have an unsanctioned fight. And I think that's what I would like to see at WrestleMania between Drew and Jacob. I would love for this all to explode into some kind of unsanctioned thing. But I do wonder over the course of a month, again, like, are they going to be fighting just every episode? Honestly, I mean, if you could find creative spaces to just beat each other up every episode, I wouldn't be against it, to tell you the truth. But it'll be interesting to see how it turns out. But that's where I think that story's going. We also got CM Punk and Roman Reigns, which we have videos, by the way. We have videos up on the channel, as well as Notsam Wrestling podcast updates that kind of went over a lot of this stuff, the Roman and CM Punk thing, the Brock and Oba thing. Like, we've covered it all throughout the week. But you know, I think CM Punk punching Roman Reigns in the face because Roman Reigns called him old. You know, I think there are some that are citing the old rule of, or the previous rule, I should say. I don't want to call anything old. Of not insulting your opponents. You know, you're not supposed to insult your opponents, because then if you beat them after you've called them old, you've beaten an old guy. And if they beat you, then an old guy beat you and nobody wins. That's not, I think, the case here at all. I don't think that's going on here whatsoever. First of all, it's Roman Reigns and CM Punk. You know, I don't think, regardless of what one or the other says, they're not going to be not looked at as two of the top superstars in the industry. We know that's who they are. There's nothing that they could do with promos to take that away from each other. But secondly, I don't think this is about the direct insults. I don't think this is about Roman Reigns saying CM Punk is old and Roman Reigns can't take that back. Or even CM Punk mentioning Roman Reigns' dad and CM Punk can't take that back. I think the whole journey is about a psychological advantage. It's about who's in the other's head. This is where we started from the beginning of this. CM Punk saying, I've already beaten you, Roman Reigns, because I'm in your head. And now it's about who's in whose head. You know, I don't think it even matters if these insults are true. Because it's not about the insults being true. This is not a story about Roman Reigns' father not being with us. And this is not a story about whether or not CM Punk is old. This is a story about showing off that your opponent is not in control and about making your opponent have an emotional response, which is why when CM Punk was on the ground after Jimmy Uso punched him in the face, he was smiling. And when Roman Reigns was on, and Jimmy was not. And when Roman Reigns was on the ground, Roman Reigns was smiling. And CM Punk was not. Because they both knew, oh, you got me. Okay, in this moment, you got me. And that, to me, is what the story is. I'm up here. I got you. I got you. Has nothing to do with the actual insult. There's nothing to that. Which is why I don't think that you end up in a scenario where CM Punk has to answer to a whole Samoan family. And I don't think you end up in a scenario where there's even a conversation about whether or not CM Punk is old. I think the conversation is simply about who is coming into this match locked in. Who is coming into this match ready to go. And I think that is what those two things are proving. That is ultimately what the story is about. It's not about Punk being old. It's about Punk being sensitive that he's old. It's not about Roman's family. It's about Roman being sensitive about his family. Ultimately, this is a story about who is the most vulnerable. Which of those sensitivities can be exploited more? And he who can be exploited more will be the one who leaves without the world heavyweight title. And we shall see who that is. Now, I do want to say, before we get to emails, there's a lot of topics that we end up not covering here on Notsam Wrestling every week. And there are even some that we don't cover on Notsam Wrestling Live on SiriusXM, even with the updates, even with the emergency podcast, even with everything. A lot of stuff either doesn't get covered, or I also recognize that it seems like these days, everything that I do is designed for people whose ears that I have for an hour or more. And I appreciate all of you that I do, and I love going deep on this stuff. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of folks that don't have that kind of time to give to me all of the time. I think that more and more you're finding people listening to podcasts that want information and want information now. And they'll go to the analysis when they have time to go to the analysis. So with that in mind, I am launching another podcast. Yes, another show from Not Sam and yours truly, the last professional broadcaster, Sam Roberts. Starting very, very soon, Not Sam Wrestling Catch-Up will be available every single day on all of your podcast feeds. As a matter of fact, if you search right now on Apple or Spotify or iHeart or wherever you get podcasts, and you just look up Not Sam Wrestling Catch-Up, you can also get a link to it at notsam.com. I'll put all those links up and everything. You can subscribe right now. The trailer is up. The thing is up. The feed is up. I've designed this. This is going to be something where every day I'm going to hit you with whatever it is. 7 to 10 minutes max. I'm going to try to stay in that 7 to 8 minute window. And I'll just hit you at the beginning of the day with what is happening right now in the world of professional wrestling. And maybe sometimes it'll be more than once a day, depending on what stories are breaking and everything. But if there was a show on last night, I'm going to give you the results. If there's a big story happening, I'm going to let you know about the big story. I'll give you a tiny little bit of insight and analysis. But for the most part, all of that will still happen here. Nothing's going to change here on this feed. Nothing's going to change on the YouTube channel. Nothing's going to change on Sirius. Nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change. You're still going to get Not Sam Wrestling every week. You're still going to get your Not Sam Wrestling updates. You're still going to get your emergency podcasts every single time they're required. But as well as that, there will be a new podcast feed for those of you that just want something quick in the morning to let you know what you need to know in the world of professional wrestling in the moment. And it's called Not Sam Wrestling Catch-Up. CATCHUP, Catch Up. And it's available everywhere you get podcasts, absolutely for free. So do me a favor, please go now. If you're hearing this, go now, hit the subscribe button early, leave a review right now. Tell me what you think of the idea. Hit it with a rating. Interact with the feed now. So that way, as soon as episodes start pumping out, and I'm talking about days, it'll be out very, very soon. And once it starts going, it'll be going. From that point on, we're off to the races. But go, do me a favor, subscribe now, leave ratings and reviews, get us in a prominent spot so that once this thing starts rolling, it'll start rolling. I think it'll be great to have something in this wrestling space for people that don't have a ton of time but want to stay involved in the conversation, and also for all you guys that maybe you want the analysis, but at the same time, you also want to be able to just click something on and go, what happened? Oh, okay. All right, now I know what happened. And, you'll hear what happened and then come back to us here at Notsam Wrestling where it's like, okay, I'm ready for the analysis now because I got the update. I got caught up. I got the Notsam Wrestling catch-up. So Catch-Up Pod is coming very, very soon. The trailer and the feed are up now everywhere you get podcasts. Subscribe to Notsam Wrestling Catch-Up. Let's get to these emails. If you want to email in, it's notsamwrestling@gmail.com. Notsamwrestling@gmail.com. Let's go to Chris, who wrote into notsamwrestling@gmail.com. Chris writes, following Oba accepting Brock's open challenge for Mania, who would you have win? Oba as he's one of the future, or Brock as it might be his last Mania? It's hard for me to believe that Oba Femi's not going to win. I love the idea of Oba Femi winning at WrestleMania. I'm very, very curious, intrigued, and the like to see what happens with Gunther at WrestleMania. But, I don't think Gunther should simply be defined as somebody who kills careers. You know what I mean? I don't think he should just be the retirement match guy. Because I love the idea of Oba Femi beating Brock at WrestleMania. And then continuing this build, and by the time we get to August, May, June, July, by the time we get to August, our next stadium show, we get Oba versus Gunther. And if you've got Oba beating Brock, and then Oba being the first guy since the Cena match, I should say, who's beaten Gunther, now you've got a real opportunity to keep building. Maybe Oba wins the Royal Rumble. And maybe Oba goes to WrestleMania a year from now in a championship match. But I like Oba beating Brock, and I like Oba facing Gunther at SummerSlam, personally, as of now. Kaysen writes in, do you think Randy will bring back the punt kick from 2009? He teased it with Kevin Owens a year ago, I believe. Also, in your opinion, which brand is doing better? Which one do you think more forward? Look, probably he meant more forward to watching each week. It's a great question. First of all, yeah, absolutely. I think Randy will 100% bring back the punt kick. Yes. In terms of which Raw or SmackDown do I like watching week to week? I mean, it all depends on the story, man. Like, this week, Raw coming up, you've got Roman and Punk again. You got Brock. You got Oba. You got Becky. You got all this stuff on Raw. So I'm very much looking forward to that, but also, right now, it's hard to say. I think ask me in like May when stuff starts to cool down. Because right now, everybody's running on all cylinders because it's like pedal to the metal WrestleMania season. Let's go to Mark in Tarzana. He says, Sam, my PTC and wise man on all things wrestling, and hits me with one of these. First, I caught the end of a documentary on PBS this week called Legends of Luchador. It featured Rey Mysterio's uncle and cousin. Maybe a program for SoCal, but if you can find it, check it out. Ooh, that sounds very, very good. Then he writes, when Oba came out on Raw to confront Brock, was Seth smiling? Could you see Oba and Seth forming a new faction? Absolutely. Seth was 100% smiling. Seth sent like an Instagram or something about it, with a picture of Oba. I think that coming off of that segment, Seth 100% knew that Oba was coming out. And I do wonder if there isn't some kind of a new, vision type thing. Now, I don't think Oba will ever be involved in a faction with Seth Rollins. But the idea that Seth is like looking at somebody like Oba and going like, yeah, he's got my blessing, something like that. But yes, I think there is something there. And I think Seth 100% knew Oba was coming out. Louise writes in, Roman Reigns has proven consistently over the years that he's a genius at manipulation. Is it possible that CM Punk has been studying the master and that his reaction to being called old was a red herring to make the OTC believe that he had actually gotten into Punk's head? Punk is aware he's not a kid, and in a past promo even mentioned that, along with the fact that he has bad tattoos, with the OTC believing that he had gotten into Punk's head. He would continue along the "you're old" line while Punk is actually unaffected by it. I don't know. That's pretty deep. I think that it might be a little bit of a stretch just because of how deep it is, but it'd be interesting. And the deeper the better as far as I'm concerned. These stories, these stories, I love the level of detail going in and the nuance, and that's a lot of nuance that you just pointed out. So do I think so? No. Do I think it'd be interesting? Yeah, hell yeah, I do. Raj from Queens writes in, as previously discussed in older podcasts, Brock Lesnar's dominant victory over John Cena last year presents an opportunity to transfer the rub to another superstar. Oba appears to be an ideal superstar to receive this significant boost. Is it also possible that Lesnar could defeat Oba? Given the scenario, which represents a clash of alpha males where there can only be one, how would you rebuild Oba's image if he were to lose? And similarly, how would you rebuild Lesnar's dominance if he were to be defeated? Love the weekly segments from Notsam Wrestling Live where you explain wrestling to Danielle. It's great content. Yeah, I hope you guys are keeping up on that because those are some low-key bangers. Everybody, I'm hearing such good feedback on them, so I appreciate that. So how would I rebuild? Well, for Brock, I don't think it would be too tough. I mean, Brock, it just becomes a matter of disappearing and then coming back and tearing somebody limb from limb in a month or two. I don't think it'd be tough at all. If Brock lost, and then even if you had him around, if you kept him and brought him to Backlash and had him beat somebody at Backlash, now you're back. Now you're running on all cylinders. Just because one guy can beat Brock doesn't mean everybody can beat Brock. For Oba, I think it would have to be somebody with credibility mocking Oba Femi, and then Oba Femi beating that person with credibility for mocking him. And then going forward and winning another big match and winning a title or something like that. I think it would be a little bit more work for Oba, but possible. Avik from London writes in, since and including WrestleMania 40, Cody has been bloodied on the road to every WrestleMania. That's true. Rock hit him. Cena and Travis Scott hit him. Now Randy hits him. So far out of the three, which is your favorite build to Mania for Cody? Well, here's the thing. We're still at the very beginning, right? I don't think you're ever going to beat WrestleMania 40 in terms of the full build. They all had incredible opening segments. The Cody didn't get bloodied in the Cody got bloodied in the opening segment for WrestleMania 41 build and WrestleMania 42 build, which was John Cena turning heel and Randy Orton turning heel. Rock bloodied Cody later on into the thing. But if you're talking about the opening to those builds between the press conference in Las Vegas for WrestleMania 40, John Cena turning heel at Elimination Chamber last year, and Randy Orton on SmackDown, I mean, look, that John Cena heel turn moment was like 1 in a million. So it might go 41, 40, 42, or 4. I mean, I don't know. It's you can't rank builds while you're in the middle of the build. It's impossible. We don't know where it's going yet. Joe writes in, Dearest OPTC, I was curious if you had any predictions for this year's Andre the Giant Battle Royal. I've been hoping to see a Kit Wilson upset win, but now I'm wondering whether his program with Jelly Roll will extend into WrestleMania. Yeah, I think so. Oh, Tama Tonga, or maybe bring Johnny Wrestling back from the depths of despair. No, I think Tama Tonga is probably a good pick. Anybody could do it. I have no idea, but Tama Tonga would make a lot of sense if he won the Battle Royal. Dean writes in, to my podcast tribal chief, one's up. I acknowledge you. Oh, I appreciate that. Please allow me to speculate wildly. I would love to see Danhausen declare himself the official host of WrestleMania, despite both GMs telling him no. He could have a few segments backstage and maybe one thing in the ring each night. I think it would be hilarious. Maybe even someone getting cursed. What do you think? I don't think he needs to be the host to do that. You know what I mean? He could just do it. Or he could be in this tag match with Jelly Roll. But I mean, that'd be fine. But no, I mean, I don't know. No, I don't think I would have him host it. That feels like it's a little overbearing. But I would have him in segments both nights. I think that's probably the compromise that I would make. Hey, I appreciate you guys. Don't forget to sign up now and subscribe to that Notsam Wrestling Catch-Up podcast feed that's coming very, very soon. Later this week, I'll be on Chris Van Vliet's Insight Show, and I'll have him on Notsam Wrestling, so both of those will drop at the same time later this week. So a lot for you to do. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to this podcast feed, and we'll talk again soon.